Okay, this is like the Hail Mary. Throwing it out there. This speaking project, this dictate protocol, Portal Mountain, the mobile portal generator. Currently in the middle of a project to do a number of things. I described the strike point protocol. Strike point being where you simply pick a place to begin and let the meaning unfold itself depending on your context, the context of your body. So that's why a linear approach to expression, to media expressions, is going to be counterproductive to within the system that we are operating in, and in which I'm trying to now explore. So the Hail Mary, because who knows where this can go, who knows where it will lead. It's a feeling I've had before in some of my previous writings. I just feel like I have accumulated so much experience in a span of time that I simply have to sit down and write again, or in this case to simply talk and dictate, which seems to be going well. So so here's my next writing piece. What could it be called? I've thought about the current event. This is a meme going back a few years at least, which was an interesting video take on something a user named Skunk Paste created, a video of his own. I really enjoyed it, made my own. So it was titled The Current Event. It's about the current event. It's talking about the current event, and at the very end kind of wraps things up into bringing attention to the now. The now is experienced through the body with a model of the body which is isomorphic to the body. So when you have a model, you have something to compare with. You have a running experiment. Somebody tells you, oh, did you know perception is like this and it's like this? And then you say, no, I didn't know that. Now it's your choice if you want to go ahead and do an experiment and try to set up the mimetic foregrounding and backgrounding operation such that you are doing something. So you make a prediction by the model, you do something, you do an action, and then you watch the model unfold and notice where any discoherences have come up, usually always along the fringes of any model you're describing. It's kind of like a strike point again. The strike point protocol is going to come up a lot. It means to simply you're picking an aspect or a perspective on the web, in the web of meaning, in whatever domain that you're interested in covering, and then the strike point unfolds to just wherever your meaning and context leads you to, whatever you think you need to be talking about next, in order to with reference to whatever you're doing, lay out enough of a background for people to or for somebody to get a gist or get an idea of the of what you're talking about by giving it so much context. This is like a functional representation or translation of the problem of meaning, by which, and also known as emptiness in the Buddhist tradition, by which nothing has any meaning in and of itself. Whenever you try to describe anything, you end up unfolding a fractal, which is describing a whole bunch of things around that thing. And that's how you gain a context for something. And then, so the strike point protocol says to pick an entry point in the fractal, and then just freely hop from point to point, paint, almost like painting a picture. It's the process of painting a picture, except you're guiding it in a specific way, which has to be taken as provisional, and it's better just to express something and rewrite it later. At least you've recorded something, which is important. So there may come along other people with different, they may prefer to bring up a different ordering of the things that you brought up, right? So it may make more sense this way or that way, depending on which individual you're bridging to, and which culture you're bridging to. You try to make start from high relevance, especially with the strike point itself. So one cloud or one domain may have many different strike points depending on, well, what's your point? So you may have many different points or ideas or points that you want to convey to somebody, and so within the same kind of general domain you may have multiple strike points. So that's the strike point protocol. Continuing on with that, so once you have a domain, then you get what we call the arc, and that's I suppose you try to do that. This is like you're mimetically trying to do that, but it's really in the interpreter or the observer of the media expression, I suppose, which recreates this arc, and then the arc meaning kind of like a narrative, or a how does this all make sense in some way? Like you put together your own understandings of the process which is going on, whatever abstraction or whatever we're trying to describe. So that's the arc, like an arc of lightning, and so the strike point is like a lightning strike, and it goes out and unfolds and forks just as lightning does, taking all kinds of different paths. And you see kind of a central, usually or often, or main central branches, and then side branches and side branches. So this is how we describe the fractal. That's the point of the strike point protocol, is simply a way to describe a fractal. So we end up talking about or wanting to convey information in a way that's interpreted and utilized in a way that is isomorphic with the neural operating system. In other words, it ends up having this fractal structure, which we see in many places in life, and we can end up using this type of technique, especially when considered using the triad. So there is going to be, or I would say that I need to iterate the triad protocol, which is to apply a holonic type template over these in and within, and in many different ways and kind of dimensions of understanding this, to apply the archetype model guild triad, and to place whatever information you're receiving, place it in the right spot, and then see how it looks from different perspectives, from in other words, mimetic, abstract, or concrete perspectives. It's like the same as saying from looking at the abstract phase space or looking at the spectacle. They are codependent. However, you can set up your thought patterns to align to one or the other, to give you information and to feed into a system of utilizing. It's like a mode of perception and thought, to utilize one way or another. And that's where how, like in the point I'm kind of getting to is how in the abstract, when you're thinking about abstractions, there are actually concrete objects coming up in your mind processes in the neural operating system. So you always have that codependency between concrete and abstract, which is what we're seeing there. So that's the Triad protocol and the strike point protocol. So the relevance that I wanted to get to here is dealing with something called the DEC protocol, if I haven't mentioned it yet. The DEC protocol is basically trying to create a social, you could say a neural and social database of externalized memory. So what we want to do is have whatever we're doing outside, in this case on index cards or paper, or we do have software running for this, but to keep it simple, DEC protocol, we want an isomorphic externalized memory database, which is used to create a representation of certain things within the neural operating system that we want to take care of and notice and share with each other. So we have these tools visually in this externalized memory system of cards, index cards, typically the colored. You'll get like 5 color plus white, potentially. And so this is, again, so this is relevant to the AO. That's the software that I was referring to, as well as collaboration with anybody involved in that project to get people sort of up to date with the research that we have been doing on the protocols since the earlier days of cooperation, we'll say, in earlier forms, which have been, you could say, probably on hold for a couple years. Sort of, I should say, the relationship as far as development of the meta organization goes. So we've been off doing our own research, and within the last, say, few months, collaboration has sparked up again. Again, like I just said at the start of this recording, I feel like I've had a lot of experience that I need to express and to get out again. And so this takes me a period of focus, which can be very rewarding but stressful, because I need to spend hours and hours preparing and typing. My last writing piece took me 3 months. I wrote it on my trip across Canada with my wife, as in she was present, and we discussed some things. But I did this writing on the coast-to-coast drive, and many hours here and there, just out in we were camping, so out in the forest or on the ocean side, or just you know, while driving, just writing, or having my wife write notes. But that was a long process. It took a long time. This is why I'm trying something different, which I call the dictate protocol, which I introduced in some of the previous notes a few days ago. It's now, by the way, Tuesday. My last recordings of approximately 4 hours were on Saturday. So again, I need to continue perhaps my writing series if I can come up with something that's kind of worthy of the let's say a next piece in that series, because it's been 2 years. But main part of the purpose of this is to connect with, or to reconnect with, parts of the organization, let's call them friends, the Meta organization, that have been doing their own work, and I feel like it's time to come back together and share notes, compare notes, get more serious into certain collaborations, specifically AO. But even just like the research with Portal Mountain is a little bit more practical, you could say. We are basically implementing this this system as it is, in a way that turns out to look like an academy or dojo, a learning institution, learning about what you could say, well, we call it coherence, but really this is along the path of embodiment. We just call it coherence. And of course we use our own symbol set to avoid triggering in so many ways, so we can calibrate our terminology to be less triggering for whichever. Well, we have a very basic audience right now, but the whole system is intended to be symbol agnostic, or able to switch symbols and translate between different systems. That's really what we're trying to do, but also to figure out what does this all mean at the same time while we're doing it. So filling out and exploring. This is us exploring the fractal. So we've already, our strike point was a long time ago, and it was just called, I guess the model. That was our first document, the standard model of memetics. So again, this is supposed to be, so this is also been called the meta religion. But it describes meta organization. So how to be aware that there are differences in coherence among people, and that teaching and learning has to happen, whatever you want to call it, discipleship. There's different angles and aspects to this, and it's just unfolded wonderfully over the last couple of years since my last writing piece. It transformed into it's further expressing itself in the ways that it should over time, with much higher coherence. But anyhow, right now this is called, an aspect which has emerged is called Portal Mountain, and this is where we are relating to each other on a Telegram chat network group, or groups, a number of chat groups, dealing with, or sort of iterating the structure of relations in Portal Mountain. So we've identified generic, so the meta organization, generic ways to describe, and this is again isomorphic with the neural operating system. So this is coming from a consequence of deep phenomenological insight, and that is the source of the information which we write. Another way of saying is we have a good view of the body this way. We are listening to the body, and I don't just mean the body as in flesh, but the organs, both internal and external, on which we rely, depend, survive. Anyways, so collaboration is a primary goal of mine right now to just keep talking these out. I'm already at 20 minutes for this session. But like I said, the other writing took me about 3 months for the last piece, which was called Mapping the what was it called? Mapping the Mind Simulation, and then in brackets I had and how to save the worlds. So that was the last piece, and this one, again, like I said, I hope to be able to get something out much faster, which is why I'm recording right now. I don't know how much longer I should go before compiling all this. I still haven't had a chance, any kind of time to transcribe or even to listen to at all to these recordings yet. So like I said, I want to transcribe and then create a few images to show the layout of the strike point, the result of the strike point, kind of where it's gone. Maybe I might invent a type of graph or chart that looks like a tree growing sideways, giving kind of timelines of when certain terms enter the fractal, enter the domain as it's being described. That could be useful. So this gives the narrative arrangement of that, rather than and probably I should say in addition to a more generic, just simple, timeless, or more abstract view of the relations between things. Okay, so that would be two views of the same graph, and this is a concrete and an abstract graph. So the concrete one has your time, has your change over time, is trying to be represented, or to give you an idea of where the piece is going, or where this strike point has gone. So that's why I'm recording. That's why I am just speaking freely as fast as I can, and trying to keep no time for any thoughts or any distracting thoughts. I've probably had gaps at maximum of a few seconds, and normally I just keep talking, and it seems to be working out for me. Except right now, of course, it's not going to, because I am internalizing the dynamic and the fight against over a self-analysis right now. I just want to keep speaking and keep thinking about where I want to go with this current recording that I'm doing. So I want to make this very relevant to the network, as I said. I'm going to do that by giving a sort of a tour of this DEC protocol and how it works, and how this interacts in an organizational context. So social layer, or the social operating system. How is it set up and configured? How does it run, etc. So I'm going to use the DEC protocol to go into this. And so I've already mentioned that it's an external database, externalized memory database, which is meant to be isomorphic with the neurological operating system as well as the sociological operating system. And so you'll see that it matching up as well with these different aspects of perception. So we have the devotional temperament. They're the primary triad, which they are most comfortable by definition, most comfortable with, is called the execution, commitment, and narrative triad. I probably said that in reverse because if I recall, we're supposed to write archetype, model, guild. So we'll start with the archetype, that being narrative, commitment, execution. We're always going to see this structure here. So in the archetype, this is kind of like the potentiality of moving through time of this, whatever these constraints have all led up to, and you're at this, you're viewing this part of the hollow heterarchy. And the model slot, also this is where we're seeing the map. So that the first one was compass, and this is the map. In other words, concrete and abstract. But we're still in the devotional triad, right? So archetype, model, guild within the devotional triad. We describe narrative. Now we're describing commitment, which is the map. So or I should say the model. So this is what's being implemented in the concrete. This is what in a process sense, in a general sense, where you're not describing the specifics, but the structure of the order behind it, behind the process through time. So we have commitments, and so we can look at this probably two ways I'll try to get to very quickly. Commitment is when you decide to do an action. So you have a certain amount of confidence and you make a decision. So this is a top-down way of looking at it. So you're thinking in terms of commitments, and then you just keep those commitments in mind, and you're like, okay, now I'm going to the store, now I'm going to do this because, say I have committed to my health and hygiene, and I'm out of toothpaste, so you go to the store, you buy. This isn't necessarily a conscious thing, like I have committed to this, I have committed to that. These are your actions. This is what you're doing. What you're doing is what you commit to. So whether you're conscious of it or not, there is some kind of model that's going on in your head as to why, a hierarchy probably of why you're doing certain things. And we're coming eventually way up to the basics, like because I want to live, I want to survive, I don't want to die, I want to do this, I want to do that, right? And then we align our day and try to keep some of those things in mind to maybe motivate us to do the specifics. So these are commitments, and of course they're being executed. So archetype, model, guild. Here we have the guild slot of execution, and what we are seeing here is the concrete playing out of the change over time of which we are consciously aware of and engaged in. So general things have specifics in this when you look at it from the execution perspective. So if you're wondering what you're executing right now, just stop and look at what you are executing. This is a hint or an instruction or a crutch for phenomenological approaches. So I'm not telling you things so that they become a knowledge in your head. Yes, I described the strike point protocol, which is unfolding, creating a web of, or a fractal of meaning, and it should not just stop there. So what you need to do is the feedback observation tracking method, in which, as I mentioned before, you make a prediction based on a model, and then you are meditating on the results. So in other words, somebody has told you something, or you've read something, that something is how you should do something, and then you try and do it, and then you keep track of the results. What happened? Did things get better? Did they get worse? Did I notice something? Did I not notice something? So I'm telling you, for example, right now, just to, if you want to know what you're executing, this is not a matter of knowledge in your head, so to speak, not in an abstract sense, but the knowledge in your head and your I would say the current state of your neurology is indeed part of the concrete unfolding of which you could see executing. So not only the context of the things that you think you're doing, for what reason, like your commitments, your abstract commitments, you are maybe putting one foot in front of the other. If you saw something that you were about to step on and you're walking, you may suddenly lose that commitment to that execution of that action, and something becomes overridden, and a fork in your program, you get broken out of the loop into a new loop, right? So these are some things to, this is a hint at how to properly observe some of the things that as they are being described. All of this work is within the domain of, like I said, the original strike point, which was a phenomenology. Just doing this observation, observing your experience, and then being able to map and model it, and then being able to share those models, and then we can share in all kinds of interesting and creative behaviors together when we are within our own abilities. We are acting in isomorphic ways. Not that everything is perfect, but it's kind of the saying that every journey starts with one footstep or whatever. Anyways, we are at about just over 30 minutes so far for the first bit here. So we have been trying to do a mini or a sub-strike point on the DEC protocol. So this is the reason why I described the devotional triad, because this is where the AO is at right now. We have this. We are able to specifically externalize some of our memory in a way that's capturing or recording certain commitments that we have. So in other words, we're able to kind of organize activity within the individual, their own kind of, and this is not necessarily new yet. I mean, there is already some serious innovation going on as the system is running. It is visual representation of cards. I believe we almost have server-to-server replication of databases of these cards. So anyways, so I started with the devotional triad, and because this is kind of starting at the bottom, and it should be fairly easy to understand for people. It's nothing new that as far as even software goes, like if you have a good project management suite, you're pretty much there with what we're looking at. So, but the point is to be able to use this type of an externalized memory database, which is isomorphic with the human neurological operating system and sociological operating system, This being how we this trying to represent how those systems work, and therefore we find mimetic fluidity. So when you're isomorphic with the strange loop, the whole stack, that's in a isomorphism with a capital I does implies that. Just making a note that it implies the strange loop, because with what else are you going to be isomorphic? The self, the strange loop. So in that case, we can just say that something has isomorphism, and we don't even need to say isomorphism to what. Well, it's isomorphism in context of the strange loop, of the self, of which your conscious experience is a part and is inseparable from. So you may choose to observe that at your leisure. So carrying on, we have this software, we have this in software in a very rudimentary way. It's currently being implemented in some spaces, collaborative community type spaces. So what I need to do to help with that project is basically continue giving a context for protocols to operate in. So in other words, bootstrapping the isomorphic social operating system, right, which is codependently arising with the neurological operating system, the isomorphic one. So in order to capture what we call capturing protocols, we need to go a step further, because so right now AO incorporates or can speak to the devotional protocol, or sorry, the devotional temperament. But if we want to speak protocols, we're going to have to go to the pragmatic temperament. So the pragmatic triad, in format of archetype, model, guild, the pragmatic triad is process, constraint, and protocol. Right? So there's our protocol, and this is how you speak in the abstract. So if one of these, say, hacker spaces or community spaces wants to show somebody else their system, what they have up and running, or if there's a new hacker space coming up